is up, guys, and welcome back to GameBird Weekly, episode number 8. And we've got a killer episode for you today. We're going to be discussing some pretty interesting topics. Collin and I are going to be going over our impressions of Granblue Fantasy Relink. We both had a chance to spend some time in that demo, so we'll be discussing that. We'll also be discussing the Palworld Controversy. Palworld, one of the biggest games, if not the biggest game of the year right now, selling over 8 million copies. There's a lot of controversy, a lot of fighting online. We're going to be discussing that, as well as the Microsoft layoffs. What's going on there? This year has started brutally. So we'll be diving into all of that and more. But first, what's up, man? How you doing?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Not bad, not bad. Happy to be back at another GameBird Weekly talking games with you.
Absolutely.
And
Should
for
be a
you
fun
guys,
one.
oh, sorry. What were you
Should be
saying?
a fun one.
Of
That's all.
course, the funnest. The funnest. But for you guys who are just tuning in for the first time, Collin's my co-host. He has his own YouTube channel called Any Games Necessary, and throw the man some love. Go check out his channel, check out some of his videos. His most recent video is a ranking of the Yakuza series, which is pretty cool because we just got a new entry. So check out Collin's ranking of everything that came before this one. Collin, do you have anything else in the works?
I just did an Alan Wake 2 review, and then I might be doing a couple other rankings. Stay
Cool.
tuned.
All right, looking forward to that. So definitely, guys, check him out. His channel will be linked in the description box below. And yeah, man. So to start things off, what have you been playing?
Oh man, I have been playing a lot. So finished Alan Wake 2. Then I jumped on to What Remains of Edith Finch, because it was one of those backlog games I've been wanting to play.
It's a good one.
Absolutely loved it. It's a great game. Made me cry at the end. Played a little Gone Home. I feel like I missed the boat on that one.
Sure.
I feel like it would have been more memorable if I had played it like maybe right when it came out. I think it's like 10-year-old game, so you know, not throwing shade at that one. It was still a good game. I played through Pony Island, which we've got a sequel coming up soon.
Describe Pony Island real quick, because I feel like a lot of people might not actually know what that one is.
How do you describe the game? It's a
Well, for
little
starters,
bit.
it's an indie. Yeah.
It's an indie game. It's made by, hold on, I always forget the dude's name. Let me look that up real quick. Sorry. Want to give him credit. It is the developer is Daniel Mullins. So he made Inscription. He made another game called The Hex. So Pony Island is basically a game about a game, and it's part like jumping over stables and shooting things, part like hacking code inside the game. I don't know. It's a hodgepodge of weird ideas, and it's beautifully done. Then I
Nice.
played the second game, The Hex, which is just another wild game. It's like 7 different genres in one. There's an RPG game in it. There's a game that's kind of like Hotline Miami. It just gets really bizarre.
Right.
Really loved it. And then I've played a little bit of Palworld, which we'll talk about later. And then I just started Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. So I've been super busy. What about yourself? What have you been
Hell yeah.
playing?
I think I discussed in a previous episode or two, I had finished Final Fantasy VII Remake and started Final Fantasy VII Intergrade. I actually finished Intergrade today. Short, but very, very sweet. I loved it. I'm now primed and ready for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Cannot wait. It's one of my most anticipated games of the year right now. And yeah, I just love everything about that game and that world, the characters, the music. I felt like there was a little bit to be desired with the gameplay in FF7 Remake, but Intergrade really stepped it up, playing as Yuffie and your partner, who you don't directly control, Sonon. You kind of issue him like commands for his special abilities. They amped it up, and the combat almost feels more like a Platinum game or like a Devil May Cry Capcom action game. It's just high speed, you're super agile, and I don't know, like I said, it kind of had that platinum feel. I felt more like I was playing a Bayonetta or Devil May Cry than a Final Fantasy, which was really fun, actually. Story was great. So yeah, I'm primed and ready for that. I'm also still chipping away at Yakuza 0. And it's funny, we called this a few episodes back, we called this the Yakuza cast because the series has been brought up so many times now on Gamebird Weekly. And we got a new game out, and it is getting critical praise. So I know I'm excited about that, and I know you are as well as fans of the series.
Yeah, yeah. I can't wait to sink my teeth into this one. Yeah, it's getting amazing reviews.
Oh yeah.
Um,
And then,
speaking
well, oh yeah, go ahead.
of
I think you're leading into right what I was gonna say. So
yeah, I really enjoyed Integrate. It's been a while, but yeah, I mean, Square Enix definitely showing their chops with that one. It's fun. It reminds me more of like Final Fantasy 15's combat, which I like a lot better than the Final Fantasy 7 remake combat.
hmm
So I'm hoping they continue to lean into that like more action, fast-paced combat. Um, yeah, hopefully
for sure.
characters like Red 13 and Kate Sith kind of bring that in a big way.
Yeah. And they should bring there's a system in Integrate. It's called a synergy system where you kind of like you synergize. You can activate synergy mode where you're in sync with your partner character, and it makes you pressure the enemy and break their stamina bar like really fast. And you could even synergize your special abilities to do them simultaneous for like extra damage. It's really cool. So I'd like to see that. That's something that they could bring over to Rebirth, where you're able to synergize with a partner. I think that would be really neat. But
Yeah.
but before we dive into our first topic, I want to go because we brought up Yakuza. Colin and I are playing a game of, if you guys haven't watched our previous episode where we're playing Fantasy Critic games, it's kind of like fantasy football, but you're betting on different games and what their review scores are going to be, and by the end of it, whoever has out of whatever number you choose to delegate for picks, whoever has the highest score based on the most high reviews wins. Colin's the two-time champion right now. I got crushed last year. I lost the year before. I'm not sure if I lost. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Cool. I got crushed last year. I lost the year before. I don't think I lost as nearly as bad the year before, but last year was a thrashing. But we're gonna give a little update on the scores because a few games have come out now. One game for myself, two games for Colin. So naturally, he will have the higher score. But Colin's doing really. He's off to probably the best start you could have to Fantasy Critic, if I'm being honest. And before you name those scores, I thought both of those games were going to review high, but I
Mhm.
actually didn't think they'd get the score that they were going to get. I was thinking, without spoiling it, I was thinking they'd get maybe 1 to 2 points below
Yeah.
what they
All right.
landed on. So let's dive into it. What are the details?
All right. So the first game that released for our Fantasy Critic was Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown,
Mm-hmm.
which Cameron drafted pretty late in the draft, and it netted him 16 points. So I
Yep.
got an 86 on Open Critic, and from all I hear, it's an amazing game. If you're looking for a good 2D Metroidvania, I hear that it's great.
Yeah,
Uh,
people are saying it's comparable to Metroid Dread. Like I've seen a lot of people saying that and Metroid Dread are the two best modern side-scrolling Metroidvanias. So definitely check that one out. And I will say it's an 86, not as high as Colin's next two picks, but it's not a start that I feel bummed about. It's a good start. 86 is a solid score. Go ahead.
yep, and that was your, let's see, looks like your sixth pick.
Mm-hmm.
So mine were my fourth and fifth pick, and it was Tekken 8, which
Mm-hmm.
netted 90, and it's going to give me 20 points. And then Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, which was my fifth pick, and it also got a 90, which will also net me 20 points. So off to a good start there, but those I picked pretty high in the draft, and
Mm-hmm.
an 86 for your sixth pick isn't bad.
Yep.
Some of the games that have been picked up since we've last talked, you picked up Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater,
Mm-hmm.
Delta Snake Eater, I should say.
Yep.
um, and Mina the Hollower, as well as Hollow Knight Silk Song.
Mm-hmm.
I have grabbed Zenless Zone Zero, or yeah, Zenless Zone Zero,
Mm-hmm.
Frostpunk 2, an unannounced Mario Kart, Rift of the Necrodancer, and Rise of the Golden Idol. So we'll see how those pay off.
Yeah. So, again, for those of you who don't know, when the thing starts, after your initial picks that you get to do during the draft, we're each allocated $100 worth of picks, and we get to bid on our picks and spend money. I bid on three that I'm not confident in, and acquired those new three that you mentioned: Mina the Hollower, Hollow Knight Silk Song, and Snake Eater. But I bid $1 on each of them because I didn't think Collin was gonna pick those. So I was like, I'll bid $1 on those. If you know, Snake Eater, I'm not sold on. I'm actually very doubtful of this one until I get to see more. But I figured for $1, hey, this could end up being something special. Everyone, if they put as much love into this game as we've seen, which I doubt, but again, if they do, as much love as we've seen in Capcom's Resident Evil 2 remake or Final Fantasy 7 remake for that matter, I think that game's in good hands. But from murmurings, I'm not so sure that's the case.
What? Konami's back, baby.
They do good with their collections. Like that's the
They
one thing
do.
I'll give them.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, stay tuned for future episodes as we'll be announcing the scores as they update and as the games release. What's next to release, Colin? What are the next couple games? Just so everyone has a
Oh,
heads up.
to release. We've got Persona 3 Reload, which is also mine, and then
Hmm.
Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. So Persona Reload is February 2nd, and then February 29th, this leap year, we'll be getting Final Fantasy 7
Yep.
Rebirth. So,
Yep. And two games that I suspect both for me and you are gonna net us pretty good points.
yes. Yes, they will.
Um, But awesome. With that being said, let's dive in to the first topic. Granblue Fantasy Relink Impressions. Colin and I both downloaded the demo. It's available right now if you guys want to check this game out for yourselves. And we both played the single player as well as we teamed up in the multiplayer mode and got to try that out. And for anyone wondering what Granblue is, I'd kind of, and Colin, you'd probably agree, or actually, I know you would agree because we've discussed this before. It kind of reminds of a Tales game, like the Tales of Berseria or Tales of Vesperia, mixed with Monster Hunter. And yeah, before I dive into my thoughts, Colin, what are your initial thoughts before we dive into like the nitty gritty of it? Initial thoughts of it.
Um, I'm really enjoying it. And, you know, just to put this in perspective, I think this was a game that I was seeing trailers for back in like 2016, 2017, and it looked too good to be true then.
Mm,
And I know this one's gone through like loads of development hell, so I had absolute like this one was not on my radar.
right.
But when I, saw a lot of like RPG YouTubers talking about this one and talking about this one should be on our radar, I was like, you know what, I'll give the demo a try, and I am pleasantly surprised. This wasn't on my top 10 games of 2024, but after playing it, it's definitely up there.
Yep.
For-
Yeah,
yeah.
totally. Yeah, this one took me by surprise. Like you seeing some of the older trailers like 8 years ago, roughly. The game, like you said, it kind of looked too good to be true. I was like, wow, this looks incredible. This looks beautiful. It's had development hell, and my initial impressions of this game are not only does the game still look beautiful, I feel like, and it's been my memory's a little fuzzy. I feel like it adopted a little bit more of a cell shaded look than the original had, and I mean that in all the best ways. It's super vibrant and colorful, um, and no, I just the game kind of reminds me of the PS2 era of RPGs, but the game feels modern. It looks modern. It just kind of reminds me of that more kind of the fun that they used to have with RPGs back in the day. Which I'm really excited about. And one thing I'll say that was really strong with this game is the combat, the gameplay factor. really,
Right.
really impressed me. What did you think about that specifically?
Yeah, I absolutely love the combat. I got to play as, let's see, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. I got to play as 8 different characters, and they all play pretty uniquely. I mean, there are some
Right,
characters that can be a little similar, combo heavy, but I feel like overall there's like enough differentiation between all the
right,
characters for like people to have hours of gameplay on this. One thing that I will say that separates it from the Tales series in a good way is like even the regular enemies in the Tales games have like just so much health. It's like ridiculous. In this one, like the regular enemies are, you can take them out pretty quickly, and the larger enemies, yes, it's definitely like long boss fights, but they're really fun boss fights with lots of
right.
mechanics. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
uh,
No, I agree. And it seems like bosses is kind of the theme for this game. The story mode in this demo, it kind of leads you down a path. It has a couple, or it has an area that kind of opens up a little bit bigger where you can kind of choose what objective you want to knock out first. But and that's a lot of fun. Again, the world's beautiful. The characters kind of interact with each other as you're going through this kind of pathway and like funneled storyline. But the boss fights really, really shine, and they kind of remind me of Monster Hunter, but also kind of like MMO style, like Guild Wars and Final Fantasy 14, where um, the bosses will have unique tells and it will show like a graphic on the ground that you need to avoid because something bad's going to happen there, whether it's an explosion there or some sort of AoE or something of that nature. And in that multiplayer mode, you and I got to tackle a couple different bosses, and they're each super unique. They have kind of multi phases where they go into a berserk mode and they take less damage but deal more damage. Really, really neat stuff. I see very high replay value out of this one.
yeah, I completely agree. I think some of the things that differentiates this game from the Monster Hunter games and might not appeal to all the Monster Hunter fans is, the game's a little less obtuse.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I know some people like those deep mechanics.
Sure.
The areas are very contained. Like you
Mm-hmm.
fight monsters in like a smaller arena, whereas like in the Monster Hunter, at least Monster Hunter World, like you're chasing them all across the map. I don't
Right.
know if that's like a bad thing in my opinion, but some people might not enjoy that as much. Some of the things in like the story mode that I wanted to comment on, like the way you explore the world's really nice. Like the jumping feels good, like
Mm-hmm.
the platforming feels, like
Yeah.
as good as it should be as like a secondary part of the game.
Right.
I don't know if you found like the invisible chests in the game, but there's like
No.
chests that you click on and it summons these like purple crystals that you have to get in a certain amount of time, almost like purple coins in Mario games.
Ah, okay,
So
that's
I thought
neat.
that, or like red coins, I think sometimes. So I really enjoyed that aspect. It had me jumping like across roofs and stuff, and I could see the game being really good if they, add a lot of like traveling mechanics into the game.
Sure.
So um,
Sure.
yeah, and you mentioned the art style. The art style is gorgeous. Yeah, I think the cell shading looks great. It looks
Mm-hmm.
like we talked about this a little, but it looks kind of like what I imagine like the next Xenoblade would look like on
Mm-hmm.
whatever the future Nintendo console is. Like the game is just beautiful, and I didn't notice any lag or like frame drop at all during any of the
Yep.
boss battles or anything. So
Yep.
uh, whatever engine they're using, whatever they're doing, it works.
It's working,
Yeah.
yeah. And like another thing about the combat that I found really enjoyable is you have a couple of different things going on. You have your regular attack and your strong attack, uh, as well as if you hold the R1, you could select different abilities, special abilities, magic abilities. And then there's also a link up attack where you fill a meter and your characters link up, and then you do like a huge crit on an enemy. And then you have your super, and this is really neat because you do your super. It's kind of like your cinematic, almost like I've been playing Final Fantasy VII. So if you're a FF7 fan, it's almost like a limit break for your character. And what's really cool about this one, and I just found out, I don't know if you felt the same way, it felt very satisfying because those supers can chain throughout your party. And so you do yours, and then it chains to the next character, then the next character, and then the next character. And if they all do their supers, it prompts a very like ultimate finisher move. And so when you're playing in a multiplayer setting, there's obviously a time limit to where you need to hit the two buttons to activate it. But I just found it really cinematic and satisfying to where I just felt really cool when it was happening.
Yeah, it does. It does feel really cool. I love the like cinematic nature of it. I like that like I'm able to run around while it's time for other people to do theirs, and like I get
Mm-hmm.
like free shots on the boss during that. Um, yeah, I also really liked if everyone link attacks at the same time, it goes into like almost like a slow motion mode where
Mm-hmm.
you get like tons of free hits on the boss, and
Yep.
like it felt very satisfying when everyone hits that circle button at the
Yep.
same time. Yeah, I think this game's got legs. I think it's gonna be really good.
Yep.
Um, yeah,
I, yeah, the big question mark for me is the story, and like I had so much fun playing through this demo that I personally feel like even if the story is kind of basic or vanilla, like for example, Dragon Quest games, they have very kind of basic fantasy stories. It's they're not super substantive or have that much depth. This could potentially be that route. Maybe not. I don't want to sell it short. Maybe it has a phenomenal story. I have no idea yet. Based on the demo, you don't really get a peek inside of what the main story, what's going on in this world is. Um, but I just feel like even if the story is meh, like the gameplay loop was so fun that like I just feel like, oh, I want to play through this, and then I want to do the multiplayer aspect with my friends because it's a formula that works really well. It's worked with Monster Hunter. I think other games have tried to emulate that and haven't been nearly as successful. But I feel like this one has an interesting enough loop to where like, oh, this like maybe not as big as Monster Hunter, but like to be the next thing, kind of like Path of Exile and Diablo. You know what I mean?
yeah, definitely. And like as far as story goes, like all I can say is I know that this one's based on like a pretty popular anime series. I have no idea if it's like a canon story within the world, kind
Mm-hmm.
of like the One Piece game that came out last year,
Mm-hmm.
or if it's like if it just follows the story of the anime, or if it's like a non-canon. I'm sure an expert on the anime series could probably tell you, but yeah, I'm not 100% sure on that one. But hopefully it tells a good story and a story that's easy easy to follow and like
Right.
doesn't assume that you've watched the anime.
Right.
But we will see.
We will
Yeah.
see. Did you want to add anything else with Granblue at all?
Sure, I'll go over like a couple of the characters I found really fun that
Cool. Yeah, let's hear it.
there is a character named Catalina. She's like I think she's like the girl on the cover, but like she had like a lot of ice abilities and healing, and like she was like very tanky, and like if you activated abilities at the right time, you could like parry and guard. And then there's another character that we both played called Narmaya. It was like a
Mm-hmm.
samurai katana wielding character. She was a ton of fun to play as. And then one other character that we both played, Rackham. He's like a dual pistol character, and like I thought his gameplay was a ton of fun, just rapid firing at
Yep.
things.
He was my
Uh,
favorite so far that I've played as, but I'm also a sucker for those kind of characters. Sky
yeah,
Piratey, Pistol, Tinkerer, like that kind of like more steampunky character. I'm a sucker for that.
yeah, he definitely felt really fun. I was definitely pulling off a lot of combos with him. But yeah, just wanted to point out a couple of the
Hell
like
yeah.
highlights. Yeah.
All right. So again, that's our impressions of Granblue Fantasy Relink. If you guys want to try the game out, which I think you totally should, because this is probably one of those ones that needs a little bit more attention. Check out the demo. I know it's available on the PlayStation Store. Do you know if it's available on Xbox at all or Steam?
Well, so no. Well, yeah, it says Microsoft Windows. I don't know if it's available on
I
Xbox.
don't think it is Xbox, actually, now that I think
Yeah,
about it.
PS5, PS4, Microsoft Windows, and it's sandwiched right between Infinite Wealth and Persona. Comes out February 1st, so day
Yeah,
before Persona Reloaded.
not the best window for it. So show this one some love. Check it out. See if you enjoy it. This might be one that was you never heard of, or one that wasn't on your radar at all, and maybe this demo will change your mind. I know it changed mine. Sounds like it changed yours as well.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
all
I'll
right,
definitely.
and with that out of the way, we're gonna move on to the next topic. So now we're gonna dive into Palworld.
Mhm.
It's controversial. It's big. It's loved and hated by millions. Is it a Pokemon ripoff? Let's discuss it. Collin, let's start with you. What are your thoughts on Palworld?
Is it a Pokemon ripoff? No. Um, I think Palworld is incredible. I've had such a fun time playing it. Um, I feel like it's more like Ark, Survival Evolved meets
Mm,
a little bit of Breath of the Wild, meets a little bit of Pokemon stuff. Um, but I I completely disagree with the people online giving this one hate.
mm-hmm.
Um, I think if you are one of those people out there like sending emails to Pokemon Company to get this game banned or like crying about intellectual property rights of a company that's probably the most successful franchise of all time, like get a life. Um, this game's fun. Sure, yes, some of them look like Pokemon, but I've got news for most people. Pokemon look like animals, and so do these things. They look like animals. Like a blue penguin is not like uniquely Pokemon. I mean, Mario had blue penguins that you could drop off of mountains before Pokemon, you know? So I don't even like really want to. I mean, we'll engage in this discussion, but I like all you haters out there on the internet, pal world. Like I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
So,
this is a weird one for me. So I have not played much. Like when I say I haven't played much Palworld, I mean I've barely booted it up. I played about 10 minutes of it. And then Colin and I discussed hopping online. I haven't had a chance to do that and play it multiplayer. My first 10 minutes with it didn't impress me or sell me on it, but I know, despite all the hate, I know there's millions of people out there absolutely loving the game. So I do want to give it a fair shot. I don't think there's any game that you can tell in 5 minutes, 10 minutes that it's a bad or good game, unless it's like straight up broken, of course. So I definitely want to give it a chance, but I do think some of the discussion going around this is a bit wild. I'm a huge Pokemon fan. When I saw the very first trailer for Palworld, I was stoked. I wasn't like, this is Pokemon ripoff. I'm pissed. I was stoked. I was like, this looks amazing. This is hilarious. I love it. I'm here for it. So I don't get the hate. And I also find it weird that there is so much hate coming from Pokemon fans when those same Pokemon fans direct so much hate towards the Pokemon company. It feels like every new entry of Pokemon, there's so much hate from the Pokemon base, whether it's them completely disagreeing with Game Freak's decisions towards what's available in new entries Pokedex or the Pokemon Bank system and what Pokemon transfer to what game and how much of the Pokedex is going to be there at launch or whatever. I don't know. Pokemon fans are always ticked off at the Pokemon, and some for valid reasons. Obviously, there's been performance issues with the more modern entries, and there's been stuff that's questionable as far as the visuals department goes. And I know visuals aren't everything, but some of it's been pretty questionable. So it's weird to see the same group that hates on Pokemon all the time also hating on a competitor of Pokemon, but that's just my opinion. Another thing I want to mention is that competition's good. Like Palworld being successful is only good for Pokemon because it lets the companies see that there's an interest in those type of games still, and that people are excited about new ideas within those games. Look at how well Pokemon Legends Arceus did. Is it Arceus or Arceus? I think it's
It's all
Arceus. Whatever,
maybe.
who cares? It's Pokemon, it's not even real. Pokemon Legends Arceus was wildly successful. The most successful, I believe, of the last couple entries. That's Black and White remake, or not Black and White, sorry. Diamond and Pearl remake and Scarlet Violet. I'm pretty sure
Yeah.
Arceus did better than both of those. But
Wow.
it did something new. It changed up the formula. It was giving us a Pokemon that we'd never experienced before. So competition's good. I'm rooting for the underdog. There are some questions out there about um, uh, Palworld devs using assets from Pokemon games or renders for Pokemon. But from what I've seen of this game and from what I've heard from people who have actually played Palworld, not just people venting online, is that other than monsters that share similarities in design, there's not really much else there that's to Pokemon. Like you said, it's a survival game at its core. Like base building is a core mechanic of the game. You have hunger meters. Your pals have hunger meters. All that sort of stuff that you'd see in a game like Ark Survival or Subnautica, or it just adds that creature element into it. So it's not really a Pokemon game at all. A bigger Pokemon comparison would actually be a game like Temtem, which for some reason no one's calling for that game to be sued.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just, the flavor of the week and people want to be naysayers. Um, like I think the most egregious one I saw was there's one that looks kind of like Lucario, but I
Sure.
would have people Google search Anubis and tell me what that looks like because Pokemon straight ripped uh, that Jackal character,
Sure.
Lucario from Anubis. So like it would make sense that other companies would want to use Egyptian iconography
Yeah.
in their video games. Is it a little on the nose? Sure, but like, the game is also made in parody, and so like
Yeah.
there are some, you know, usage rights in that situation where like you can't really get
Right.
like super parody. All I'm gonna say is that like I'll be more disappointed in Pokemon Company than I was in Scarlet and Violet's performance if they sue
Yeah.
um Pocket Pair.
I
Um
don't I don't think that's it's gonna come to that. Obviously, Pokemon Company had a statement saying that they're gonna investigate that, if their assets are being used, if there is plagiarism, they're gonna investigate that. But honestly, I feel like we know Nintendo, we know the Pokemon Company. I feel like something would have happened immediately. It wouldn't be like this drawn out thing. They would have taken action immediately. There would have been some sort of cease and desist for sales or pulling it from the store. So I think it's more about people probably just flooding um, Pokemon Company with like, look, they're ripping you off. Look, they're using your renders. Look, they're doing this. Look, they're doing that. Um, but again, it's like competition's good, and for me, like, like I said, I didn't even care for my first few minutes in Pal World, and I love Pokemon. I want to give Pal World a try. I might end up loving it, but when I have series that I love, I I don't like guard them to where like I don't nothing better copy this. This is the only one of that. I want more of the stuff that I love. Zelda's my favorite series. I want more Zelda likes. I want more open world adventures with dungeons and exploration and a good story and puzzle mechanics. Like I want more of that stuff because that's my favorite series. That's my favorite genre. And it's nice having something to play that's similar to that core franchise you love while you wait years and years for a new entry. I don't want Pokemon to just die with Pokemon. I want there to be other monster catching games that are super fun with cool RPG mechanics. I want, other platformers. I don't want anyone to not make platformers because I love Mario. Give me more.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I feel like most games at this point, like with the exception of like a few games like maybe Pony Island is one,
Mm-hmm.
and then like when the Souls-like game first started.
Sure.
But like I feel like everything's iterative at this point, and
Yeah.
like to basically, just write something off as like a clone before even like really getting your hands on it is just
Yeah.
it's just lazy. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
and I know a lot of these people, and not everyone, mind you. I'm sure there's plenty of people who have played it who still feel the same. But I guarantee you, a lot of the people who are really upset have never even picked up and touched the game. To be honest,
yeah, absolutely.
because I feel like if you had like again my short time with it, my earliest impressions was like, oh, there's like a Pokemon like mechanic in this game, but this doesn't seem like a Pokemon game to me. Earliest impression. But
Yeah.
other than the negative, because I don't want to feed too much in, that's kind of all I wanted to get into with all the toxic people and toxicity surrounding this title. You've gotten a chance to spend more time, unless there was something else you wanted to comment on in regards to the negativity around it, of
No,
course. So I want to
no,
hear your more in-depth thoughts then, since you got to spend more time with it than me. Some of your thoughts about the gameplay loops, the mechanics, what you find appealing about it.
so I've been playing for a little bit. I just hit level 14, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
not like super far into it, but I've gotten to cruise around the world. I've unlocked like the ability to ride some of my pals.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I caught a few humans, which is, you know,
Slavery.
yep,
All
it's
right.
frowned upon, but you know what? If I can do it, I'm gonna do it in the game. I've got my base up to like level 7. I'm getting ready to take on the first tower. I
Mm-hmm.
found a I found a dungeon
So,
that was a little bit too low of a
for
level.
someone, not to interrupt you, but for someone who doesn't know, I don't know what the towers are. If you want to explain that real quick, that
So
mechanic.
I mean, there's like a syndicate in the game,
Mm-hmm.
and like essentially there are like leaders of the syndicate, and you need to go bust down their doors and take out their leader
Mm-hmm.
to like capture the next area in the
Got
game.
it.
It's kind of like, I mean, I hate to say gym battle, but it's kind of something like similar to a gym battle, in the fact that like, it kind of represents you finish that region, like you're
Sure.
strong enough. Um, I've encountered a couple boss battles. I've caught in a shiny. Yeah, I'm having a blast with this one.
Again, it's not like Pokemon, but there's some elements sprinkled in there.
Yeah, I mean, I think yes, it's borrowed some ideas and some
Yeah.
concepts from Pokemon, but you know, you do what works when you make a game, and
Sure.
you know, uh, like no one's getting mad at Liza P that came out last year.
Yeah.
I mean, that game is Bloodborne, but
Yeah.
it's
Through and
awesome.
through.
You
Yep.
want we want more Bloodborne. Like,
Yep.
I'm not gonna be like, I'm not gonna play this. I refuse to play this because they really like Bloodborne and they made so yeah, I just think it's silly.
Right.
The game is fun. Like, I felt nothing but joy playing it.
Oh yeah.
Um,
And how would you compare? Because you got to play multiplayer with a friend, and you've spent some time solo. Do you have a preference? How's the multiplayer work in that one for you?
the multiplayer is great. The only thing I didn't care for in the multiplayer was like, Um, so you have a box where you keep your pals, like it's like a
Mm-hmm.
pal box thingy. And then you can put pals uh to work in your camp to like automate stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you basically share those pals that you put there. So like our pals kept getting mixed together. So like
Mm.
my friend saying has some of my pals that I caught, and I was like really confused. I was like, where to go? Where am I? Like, yeah, and he's like, "Oh, I took it. I'm using it for battling." I'm like, "Okay, cool." And then there are certain items that you can make for your pals. This is
Mm-hmm.
getting like really in the nitty-gritty, but like um there's certain items you can make for your pals, and unfortunately, like you can't share them. So
Right.
like he used a bunch of materials to make a saddle for me, and it just picked up both the saddles, and like they went
Mm.
into like a special area where he can't access, and So I mean, there's like a few things like
Right.
kinks that they need to work out, but I mean, overall, it's a pretty impressive game,
Right.
and it does something that I absolutely love that I wish Minecraft would do. I wish almost every survival crafting game. When you're building something, it will use resources that are inside your storage area without you having to get them,
Mm, that is a
which,
nice quality of life.
yes. And then the pals working in your camp, like mining for you, doing the basic stuff that you don't want to do, the boring crap. Yeah.
Right.
So I really enjoy
That's
that.
cool.
I think, yeah, I think this is one I'm going to sink a lot of time into. Um, I mean, an 8 is really good from IGN as far as like uh, games that are in early access. Baldur's Gate 3 got a 7 from them in early access, so
Yep.
that number can only go up, hopefully.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. Totally.
yeah,
Hell yeah. Well,
right?
I'm looking forward to giving the game another chance. Like I said, it seems like everyone's enjoying it. I barely touched it. I was still in the tutorial phase. Um, so I something came up. I had to hop off. So my earlier impressions were like, eh. But I'm excited to really try it out and sink my teeth into it and see what it's all about. But with that being said, for those of you who are enjoying Palworld, I'm stoked for you guys. I'm sure most of you who are enjoying it are Pokemon fans too, and this is something awesome to tide you over until the next Pokemon game. And for those of you who are sending death threats to the developers,
Yeah, get a life.
get a life. Yeah, it's uh, no bueno. But
No.
anyways, with that being said, let's move on to the next topic. All right, so this one, we went from like happy news to this weird BS fighting that's happening over online, super toxic communities over Power World. Now it's time for some sad news. It's been downhill since the show started, but this one's really sad. There was an announcement today that Microsoft laid off 1,900, right, 1,900 employees after the Activision Blizzard merger from Activision Blizzard, and this is an astonishing number. This is a lot of people who got displaced out of nowhere, probably, who probably rely on this income to pay their bills, take care of their families, feed their kids, all that stuff. And what's even more alarming, I saw a post. It may have been from Alana Pierce, who's popular in the industry. She used to be over at IGN. I think it was her. It may have been someone else who tweeted that 6,000 devs have been laid off, and we're only in January. What a year! And if that's an accurate number, that is really disturbing and scary, especially when you think of how big the video games industry is and how much money it's pulling in, and how so many companies within the industry are having record year increases in revenue. It's crazy.
It is.
It's absolutely madness. What are your thoughts on this, man?
Um, like the first thing I want to like bring up is Bobby Kotick. Um, Bobby Kotick left there with $400 million, $400 million, and then they lay off 1,900 people. It's absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, it's pretty monstrous, especially considering what a creep that guy was. To be honest with you.
Yeah. So, I noticed that it's mainly happening a lot in like Western companies.
Mm-hmm.
You have Bracer Group, you have a lot of these smaller indie devs are laying off a lot of people. Um, I mean, I think it's just like the way capitalist society works. Like, like the goal of like a public company is to maximize shareholder value by generating profit. That's the literal definition of, and it just shouldn't be like that. Like, I feel like a goal of a company should be like taking care of people first, but at the end of the day, they have to bring in those ones and zeros and those dollars for their shareholders. And, like they acquired a company and they had a lot of redundancies, and instead of doing the right thing and finding forming another studio or like getting them working on a new project, they went ahead and let them go. And there's a lot of talks about CEOs and like how it's the CEO's fault. And I'm not going to sit here and defend CEOs, but like, even I mean, this is even happening with, like, by all accounts, a pretty good CEO in Phil Spencer, so like he's our best case scenario and he's laying off 1,900 people. So I mean, without making this too political, I think the system itself is the thing that's broken, so
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a mix of the system and I think it's I feel like it's a cultural thing too, because I do want to give an example of a company that went through some really hard times, and that's Nintendo, out of Japan. And they went through some really hard times during the Wii U, where shareholders were begging Nintendo to basically leave the console market and just do software and do cell phone stuff. So Satoru Iwata, I mean, you know, for better or for worse, he had some really high highs. He also had some low lows, unfortunately. But what a president of a company that guy was, because he cared so much about the teams that worked under him that to avoid layoffs during the roughest time in their company as a console manufacturer and software developer, he had all the higher ups take salary cuts to avoid laying off anyone. And I mean, that's a very, very rare instance. It's not something I've ever heard before outside of that one person. But I know Nintendo does have a culture of um, finding ways to make games within a budget to where they don't have to crunch and they don't have to worry about laying off staff. And I don't know. I feel like in the States, we have less of a culture of that, or less of a value for of our workers. I'm not really sure what it is culturally that's different out here, but I think part of it is cultural.
yeah, absolutely. And then there's another thing that I feel like contributed to a lot of these layoffs. To do a little inside baseball here. Obviously, just based on people watching, they can tell that my day job is not podcasting. My day job, I do accounting for a rather large company I won't name. And I think a lot of people think that like accounting is kind of more in charge of like telling you who they should lay off and stuff like that, but it's actually more of a like a finance role.
Hmm.
Um, so accounting tells you what you have. So I would report numbers that like on what we have. Finance finance likes to project what we will have. And I think during the pandemic, the video game industry as a whole saw like a skyrocket of like a lot of people staying at home playing Animal Crossing, buying video games to get through you know, escape reality. And what the finance people did, instead of, realizing that this was an anomaly, there's, a pandemic raging in the background, there's a lot of other, extenuating circumstances, they projected that growth year through year, and they expected that much exponential growth. So a lot of companies, hired big, greenlit a ton of projects, um, and just, spent out of control. I mean, look at Embracer right now.
Hmm.
Um, and what happened is that
Colin, do you want to
those
not to cut you short, but do you want to just let everyone know about Embracer and like what happened with that company? Because there might be people who are listening who are like, why do they keep mentioning Embracer? Just in case
so
someone might not know, like just
Embracer's a
like
very
a short version of it.
yeah, Embracer's a very large group that's bought a lot of beloved video game companies and rights to a lot of beloved franchises and different parts of like the entertainment sector. Their biggest property is probably Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
but they purchased Crystal Dynamics and Eidos Montreal from Square Enix. They own Gearbox Entertainment. They own THQ Nordic, and they also, I'm trying to think. I know they bought a couple other companies, but I mean, their list is just crazy, and all they specialize in is
Buying companies.
purchasing, buying companies. They're a company that buys companies. And um, if you've ever heard the term too big to fail, this is basically we're seeing it right now. And they have completely gutted these companies. There was a deal that they were making with I think the Saudi government, and if to like the Saudi government was going to give them a huge influx of cash, and that basically fell through, unsurprisingly. And this company, with like the exception of like Remnant 2, has failed to deliver anything good
Yeah.
since its inception. So um, I anticipate like entire closures of studios, and
Yeah.
it's sad because I don't know if Gearbox or Eidos Montreal or Crystal Dynamics will ever land on their feet again.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, so even in my own job, I've experienced finance, coming to me, disagreeing with the numbers because they don't match their forecasted numbers, and that, like we're not making enough money. Why aren't we making enough money? And like it's definitely a thing. They overpromise and underdeliver constantly.
Mm-hmm.
I think it just seems to be finance across across any type of company,
Right.
seems to overpromise to placate shareholders and investors. And I think just the system as a whole is just kind of rotten to the core, like
Mm-hmm.
with the way that businesses are run. Um, my my suggestion to gamers out there is like if you've got extra money to spend and you really believe in a project, like go on Kickstarter, go on the crowdfunding sites. Like, a lot of these people are probably going to form their own studios. They're going to make the games that you love, like maybe not the same name, not Banjo Kazooie, but ukulele, not Suikoden, but 100 Heroes, Ayuden
Yeah.
Chronicles, like fund these projects. Like, it is a much better system. You pay for it, you put money into something that you believe in, and if you pay enough, you'll get the product. I think our stock market as a whole, like not to get on too much of a soapbox platform, but I think, the initial thing was to give companies an influx of cash to, pursue the things that company like people actually believed in. And now it's just day traders and like a lot of people making a lot of bets. And like, there are things like stock shorts that just really don't make any sense. Like, I think just the whole shareholder thing and people that have no business like telling a company like what type of thing to do, with their business are like constantly in their business. So I
Sure.
don't know. I think
Yeah.
crowdfunding is the future.
Crowdfunding's great, and like, I want to bring it a little bit more to the game development side. Um, do a little bit of a shift because I also think with the direction that we're going right now with game development, especially from like the big studios or the big guns like Sony and Microsoft and some of those bigger developers, is these massive, extremely expensive AAA blockbuster experiences. And they require a lot of money, a lot of time, and if they don't work out, the losses are too great and that studio's got to go. But that's like the norm now. It's one of the things I appreciate from Nintendo right now is like they make game they're not chasing power, and they're
Mhm.
making games a lot more affordable. So they can make one of their big IPs and it only sells 1-2 million copies, and that's fine. Whereas if Spider-Man 2 only sold 1 million copies, that'd be devastating for Insomniac with the money that they had to put into that game. And then you add into the mix these same huge blockbuster AAA experiences, but now they're games of service too. And they're designed where the studio has to make this game successful for the next 10 years. And if that doesn't take off, because games of service are a dime a dozen these days, and most of them, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you cut out at games of service.
Games
Sorry.
of service are a dime a dozen right now, and it's a gamble. Most of them fail. It's like winning the lottery, having the next big games of service. You know, there's only a couple that have lasted the time. Destiny 2's lasted. Fortnite's obviously lasted. A lot of the other ones have struggled. Not that they haven't done well from launch, but most of these studios shut down or they have mass layoffs and you know, I'd be interested. I know we're gonna do a Sony episode soon of Gamebird Weekly, but in some of those leaks with Insomniac, there was stuff about Sony pressuring for layoffs, and that game was Spider-Man 2 was wildly successful. So like that's crazy when you think about that. And Sony had a plan for like within 5 years to release 10 games of service. I'm assuming now obviously there's been no official statement. My assumption is that Sony has walked back some of those developments given the response and seeing a lot of the failures that are happening in the industry surrounding most new games of service not taking off. I'm sure they've walked that back a bit or at least cut that goal in half or maybe even cut it more than in half. And that's probably why we're going to see a little bit of a drought from like Sony first party exclusives as well going forward because they're now like maybe starting over on new projects. That's just speculation. But it makes me wonder with rumors about a place it makes me wonder that with rumors of a PS5 Pro or an Xbox Series X Pro, like why the developers are still learning how to develop on the current hardware. Like we're still not fully taking advantage of what's out. So now we're going to make development even more expensive and we're going to lose even more studios when things don't land and development's going to take even longer. I don't know, like the whole direction this industry is going is kind of wacky if you ask me.
Yeah, I think, it's one thing, like if you're taking a gamble financially, it's another thing when you're playing with like people's
People's
lives.
lives. Yeah.
Yeah, it's their livelihood. And like, yeah, I think Sony might, have the pockets to stick with like this AAA type of thing. But I don't see like, the AAA, like, a Spider-Man game every couple years, a Last of Us game every 3 or 4 years, God of War, and just
Sure.
make those their pillars. While I don't find it very interesting or very exciting, like I feel like they could survive and not have layoffs that way, but like the games of service push, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I just read today the People Can Fly, the people that made Outriders, just laid off a bunch of people, and they didn't even make a games of service. So it's just grim
Right.
out there. Um,
Yeah. And
yeah,
I want to state like I'm not saying that I don't want blockbuster AAA games and that there's no place for them. I love those games. I love God of War and all that big stuff.
right.
Um, it's just that like when the industry is going the direction where everything has to be that, and Sony's getting rid of some of their second party like Japanese studios that made some of the games that were a little bit smaller scale but had a lot of character. Like I want to see more experiences like that are on the level of like a Pikmin or a Sly Cooper or a Luigi's Mansion or I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
some of those more like second tier level experiences that are unique and they're new ideas.
yeah. Unfortunately, I feel like we're gonna have to only see that from Nintendo and like indie developers,
Yeah.
and then maybe some of the smaller studios at Microsoft. Um, but yeah, I don't think we're gonna be getting that from like a lot of the big third-party developers.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I'll mention again that, like Kickstarter and like crowdfunding,
Yeah.
like if you want to see some really interesting game, just like that guy that did Inscription, Daniel Mullins, like look out for his games, because those are fun,
It's
exciting,
true.
interesting.
Yeah,
And
and one of the highest rated games last year, Sea of Stars, nominated for best JRPG, as well as it got a few other nominations as well, best indie. Phenomenal game. That game was on. That was a Kickstarter campaign.
yeah, like I'd urge people to check that out. Annapurna, Devolver Digital, like those companies aren't laying people off. They're making fun, interesting games. Yeah, support
Yep.
those.
And
Um,
support second party stuff too. I want to see games like like Astral Chain and Bayonetta, or like I know Nier Automata probably did really well for Square. I'm sure that game sold really. I don't really know the numbers on that one. It got a lot of praise, got a lot of media, so I'm sure it sold well. But there's a lot of games out there that are like that. There's a lot of games out there that are like that, and I don't know. It's important to support other stuff too.
yeah,
But
definitely.
with that
Yeah,
being with that being said, did you want to add anything else in regard to the layoffs, or?
yeah, just my heart's out there with the developers. I really hope they land on their feet.
Mm,
Um, yeah, hopefully, they can crowdfund, start a new studio. If there's a lot of veteran developers on that team, like it'd be a waste to see them, go to other sectors, but that's completely understandable.
yeah,
So, hoping everything goes well for them and their families. So
yeah.
it's depressing.
Or even another studio seeing like all this talent and wanting to scoop up, a bunch of grow and scoop up a bunch of these talented people, would be really cool. So
Yeah,
again, my heart goes out to those 1,900 people. It's a terrible number. 6,000 this year, if that number is accurate, is insane. It's only January. Um, the video games industry, they say, is bigger than the movie industry, so it's crazy that that could be true while at the same time it's having insane layoffs year after year.
yeah.
But
I mean, they could have given them each $210,526 um, severance package for what they gave Bobby Kotick.
there you
Like
go.
the injustice in the world is insane.
Yep.
So yeah,
But I think that's gonna be the show, guys. If you enjoy this episode, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, throw my man Collin some love at Any Games Necessary, linked below. He's got his Yakuza ranking out. He's got some new rankings coming up, as he mentioned earlier in the show. Let us know what you think. Tell us if you think we're way off base with the Palworld stuff. Let us know your thoughts and feelings about the layoffs going on at Microsoft, and tell us if you're interested in Granblue Fantasy Relink, as Colin and I both are pretty excited for that one, given what we experienced in that demo. Colin, do you want to say anything before we go?
no, thanks for watching.
All right, guys, you take it easy, and we'll see you on the next Gamebird Weekly. Peace.